Welcome everybody to Organise 2020. My name is Jed Nichols. I'm the President of the TUC and General Secretary of the Financial Services Union, Accord. I'm delighted to open this first plenary of Organise 2020, and in a moment I'm going to introduce our panel. Before I do, I just want to say how important this event is and how happy I am that you've been able to join us. The trade union movement faces some big challenges, not least supporting members through the pandemic and organising the thousands of new members who've joined us in the last 6 months. We've seen broad social movements rise rapidly to confront the twin evils of racism and ignorance. And the trade union movement stands ready to support communities in their historic quest for justice, and to continue our ongoing work to build an inclusive and diverse labour movement. Organise 2020 is our opportunity to celebrate 3 years of continuous trade union growth and to plan for the next 3 years. Before we start, just a quick moment of housekeeping. You will have seen the code of conduct that was circulated when you registered for the event, but my colleague now will share it briefly on screen, and please take a moment to review it once again. Thank you. Finally, due to time constraints, it's unlikely that we'll be able to take questions in this session, but do ask your questions in the Q&A box on your screen. Questions will be noted by TUC staff and will form part of the debate taking place across the next 3 days. You'll also have plenty of opportunities to ask questions throughout the various sessions we have planned as part of Organise 2020. So I'm going to introduce the panel. Firstly, we've got Frances O'Grady, the General Secretary of the TUC. Frances has led the TUC's response to the coronavirus pandemic, from securing the job retention scheme to pressing for safer working practices. We also have Paul Nowak, the Deputy General Secretary at the TUC. Paul is a committed trade unionist for his entire working life, starting as a union activist in NASDAQ 30 years ago. And Paul was one of the first intake to the TUC's Organising Academy just 20 years ago. We've also got Angela Rayner MP, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Angela is the Member of Parliament for Ashton-under-Lyne, elected in 2015. Angela's been an active trade unionist for most of her working life. She joined Unison as a young care worker, becoming the union's regional convener in the Northwest. As a Member of Parliament, she was promoted to Labour's front bench in the role of Shadow Education Secretary in 2016, a role that she held until her election in 2020 as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. The final member of the panel is Dave Ward, the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. Dave's been an active trade union member since he started working for the Post Office in 1976. Dave is chair of the TUC's New Deal Task Group and a driving force behind Organise 2020. So welcome again to you, welcome to all the speakers, and I'll invite Paul Nowak to address the event.
Well, thanks Jed, and thanks everybody who's joined Organise 2020 for our launch session today. Hundreds of people from around the country, indeed from around the globe, and all bound together by one single overarching common objective: to build a bigger, better, stronger trade union movement. And that's not an end in and of itself. It's because we know a bigger, better, stronger trade union movement is one that will make sure people get the respect at work that they deserve, that will allow us to win a new deal for workers so that the post-COVID-19 new normal isn't back to business as usual. And we know that that stronger trade union movement can also help deliver that change in our political framework and in our economy for the benefit of working people, their families and communities. I'm going to keep my remarks brief because you're going to hear from Dave Ward and from Angie Rayner and Francis in a few moments. But I just thought I'd start by talking a little bit about the TUC's contribution to helping our unions to grow, to help our unions reach out into more workplaces, bring more people into trade union membership, allow us to bargain on behalf of more workers. Now, I've got 5 minutes, so this is going to be not every single point, but maybe just 3 headlines, I think, to set the scene for Organise 2020. The third thing I think we've got responsibility to do at the TUC is to work with all of our unions to up our digital game. If we're serious in particular about reaching out to the next generation of workers and young people, then we have to be serious about upping our game on the digital front as well. I think the last 4 months have shown us how agile we can be. We've had to adapt to different ways of working. This event is living proof of that. Organise 2020 was supposed to be a physical conference. Now we're hosting the event entirely online, 30 sessions across 3 days. And I think we've got to take the lessons from the last 16 weeks and make sure we apply them to our everyday work, whether it's bargaining with employers, organising workers, or building our movements. Just 2 good examples of what we've managed to achieve over the last few weeks and months. If you think about trade union education in particular, 8,000 reps in the last few months have gone through TUC training webinars. 20,000 reps have accessed our micro learning sites on stuff related to COVID-19. All of our core programs are now offered online. That's not a replacement for face-to-face education, because we know that lots of reps really value trade union education in the classroom, but it definitely does supplement that work, and it gives people the opportunity to train in a way that puts them at the heart of the experience. Alongside the work we've been doing on trade union education, the TUC's Digital Lab has been working with a whole range of different unions on pilot projects, everything from getting the digital basics right to online campaigning and organising. 200,000 people have signed petitions or been involved in our megaphone campaigns. There'll be a session about that later during Organise 2020. 1.2 million campaign actions have taken place through megaphone. So upping our digital game, absolutely essential if we're going to reach out to that next generation of union members. Second point, I think if the TUC does nothing else, we've got a really centrally important role in bringing unions together to organise together and to win together. There are 23 million people out there who are not members of any union whatsoever. So what can we do to better reach out together collectively to bring those people into the TUC family, to make sure that people have that union voice? And again, during the course of Organise 2020, we'll see some practical sessions. There's one on Saturday about joint union campaigns in ISS, where unions like Unison and PCS and the JMB and Unite have been working together to organise workers across different fragmented contracts. We need to do more of that work at every single level, locally through our trades councils, regionally through our regional TUCs and the Wales TUC and our colleagues and comrades in the STUC, but nationally as unions as well. And I know that that's something Dave is absolutely passionate about and we'll talk about, no doubt, in his contribution. Third thing I think that the TUC can do is to support our unions to think differently, to innovate and to challenge ourselves as a movement. And I think my observation would simply be this: if we just do more of what we're doing at the moment, we're not going to see the growth that we need. We're not going to see trade unions reaching out into those parts of the economy where we're so desperately needed. So we need new ideas, new approaches to organising. We need to be prepared to try new things and sometimes to fail. And again, I think you'll see examples of this throughout the Organise 2020 agenda, really cutting edge examples of innovative work that we've done, trying to learn the lessons from that innovative work, whether it's the TUC's Work Smart initiative that we launched to reach out to young workers to mark our 150th anniversary, whether it's the work we've been doing on peer-to-peer organising. UCU have done some incredible work there. You'll hear about that during the course of the next couple of days as well. Learning from international examples, and we've got Australian colleagues joining us to talk about the digital campaigns they've run to roll back anti-union legislation on the other side of the globe. Being prepared to innovate, to take risks and to think differently, but also I think being prepared to challenge ourselves. And I'll finish on this point. 20 years ago, the TUC convened our Stephen Lawrence task group to, in the aftermath of the racist killing of Stephen Lawrence, to think about how we tackle institutional racism and how we made sure that our own organisations were fit for purpose and genuinely representative. A couple of weeks ago, our General Counsel agreed to revisit that work. I think really timely in the light of the Black Lives Matter movement. And we'll be working hard over the next few weeks and months with our unions and others to think about what more we can do to tackle racial injustice and equality at work, but also what more we can do to make sure our movement is genuinely representative at every level, including the leadership level, because we know we've made some great strides forwards. We know we've also got much more that we need to do. So that's a big challenge, but like many of the other big challenges, we shouldn't be afraid of them. We should challenge ourselves, because if we're serious about building a bigger, better, stronger, more representative trade union movement, that's exactly what we need to do. So, you know, up in our digital game, unions working together more effectively, challenging ourselves, being prepared to innovate, being prepared to try new ideas, absolutely crucial. That's what Organise 2020 is all about. I hope that people can join in as many sessions as they can over the course of the next 3 days to build new friendships and comradeships online, to take part in the debate. Thanks for joining in, and look forward to the rest of the event over the course of the next 3 days. Over to you, Jed.
Thank you, Paul, for that. Dave Ward, can I ask you to make your contribution?
Yeah, thanks, Jed, and hi to everybody. Morning. Really pleased to be asked by the TUC to be part of this opening session. And I suppose as we grapple with the health, social and economic fallout of COVID, there's only one thing that's certain. If we want to win for working people, then we have to grow trade union membership, and we have to make sure that we're at the centre of all new models of collectivism in society today. Before this crisis, the CWU has long campaigned for a new deal for working people. And I think it's important that we reflect that this is not just a public health crisis. It's been a crisis that's been decades in making, because the balance of forces in the world of work, politically and economically, have shifted massively against working people for decades. And I don't think we've been quick enough as a movement to adjust to that shift. So we were calling for a new deal for working people, and I think that's more important than ever. I say that because when I started work as a telegram boy in 1976 in the post office, I knew that I had a job that had a pension. It had a contract where holiday pay and sick pay was something that we all took for granted. And what a shift there's been from that for young people today, and in recent years for all workers. So, you know, we see an economy today in the UK, even before this crisis, that has been founded on the insecure employment models like 0 hours, like fixed term contracts, like short term contracts, and a big shift away from the things that we used to take for granted. 1 in 5 people today who are at work live in poverty. In-work poverty is a massive problem that we have to address, and the economy is just simply founded on low pay and low productivity and insecure work. And our job is to do something about that. Let me just give you an example of how clear it is to me that we need to work together to organise workers. In our own trade union, we represent workers across the communication sector. I want to pick out 2 companies, Royal Mail and BT, 2 previously state-run companies that have now been privatised, in the case of BT, for many, many years, but that are working in a fully liberalised market. And what that's meant to us as a trade union is that we have fought for jobs, terms, conditions, pay rises. We're a strong union. We secure pay rises for our members. We fight for those pay rises. But there's evolved around us a whole world of work in our sector of insecure work, where the workers in many of those companies are not organised. And I know that we've got a responsibility. If we're going to protect our own members, if we're going to protect all workers, we have to organise those companies. So this is crucial, this Organising 2020 festival, that we make big steps forward in cooperation. The New Deal for Workers was also a campaign that looked to the future world of work and recognised that the 4th industrial revolution was coming towards us very quick. And in many ways, we cannot afford to lose sight of the wider world of work that existed before this pandemic as we tackle the realities of the economic fallout of this pandemic. It just makes the case for a new deal for workers even stronger. We used to talk about 4 things that underpinned the new deal for workers. One of those was the need for common bargaining agendas across the whole movement. So I'm here today to say to you that with unions in our sector, like the GMB, like Unite, and we've had some initial discussions on this, the CWU is up for agreeing a common bargaining agenda that will root out insecure employment models, protect jobs in our sector. If I take that as the post and logistics sector, where I know that Unite and GMB also organise, that's part of the pledge that I want to make, that we work together to root out those problems and protect jobs as we can within that sector. The same thing would apply to all parts of the union movement in all sectors, that we cooperate more strongly and we agree common bargaining agendas between us. The second point is about cooperation. Cooperation has to replace internal competition, which for understandable reasons has sometimes plagued the trade union movement. And I think we can take a lot of comfort from the models of collectivism that I'm seeing grow around us, where people are coming together to realise that collectivism in itself is a huge part of the answer to the problems that we now face. So the pledge that is part of this Organise 2020 meeting, where all general secretaries of all the trade unions that are affiliated to the TUC, that pledge and signing up to that pledge is a massive step forward. But I plead with every trade unionist, with every trade union leader, let's give that pledge some teeth. Let's make sure that we mean what we say when we sign up for greater cooperation. Let's be open to new ideas, to new thinking. The pledge has got some fantastic things in it around a commitment from all trade unions to grow young workers under the age of 30 as part of our movement. A commitment to make sure that anybody who wants to be an activist in the trade union movement gets trained properly in the first 6 months of taking up that role. And above all, it is a pledge that we're going to measure the success of that pledge every July. We're going to come back and we're going to say, how have we done? How have we done in each sector? How has each union done? Have we invested in the digital world? Have we started to think about how we can grow the movement through digital apps, through online meetings, as well as our normal face-to-face activity? So my final point is we also need action. We need to mobilise the movement. We cannot make change happen by being spectators of what's happening around us. And the trade unions cannot afford to wait for political change. My view is very simple. We are the force that crosses every divide in society. We are a force for good. Our time has come. We can make change happen, and getting involved with Organise 2020 is the first step towards fighting for a new deal for workers. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. Just allowing a second for our interpreters to swap over. Thank you, Sandy, and welcome, Louise. Angela, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to Organise 2020 and looking forward very much to hearing your contribution. So.
Hi everyone, it's can you all hear me? Hopefully you can. Somebody, Jed, put your fingers up if you can hear me. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Not that anyone's ever had a problem hearing my mouth. Especially if you go online, they'll tell you they can hear my accent. And there's plenty of people from Manchester on today as well, so a massive shout out to TUC Northwest, which is sort of my home and territory, and Unison Northwest as well, which was kind of my playground for a very long time. Solidarity to you and hi, and I'm really pleased to be here. It always feels like coming home, being part of the trade union movement. I went into the Labour Party because of the trade union movement and for the trade union movement, because I saw one of the things that I think is really challenging for us is in the Labour Party is that we lost our roots for a while, and a plant without roots dies pretty quickly, and we need to embed our roots again. And the trade union movement, to me, is the roots of the Labour Party, and we have to be for working people. And there's a couple of things I want to touch on, which is where Dave sort of left off, and some brutalities around that as well, you know, and my own experience, because I came up through the union movement from a very working class, non-trade union, non-political sort of family. About the only politics we did in our house was that my dad got the Daily Mirror every day. And that was it really. Everything else was, you know, it wasn't really an environment I grew up in. But as Dave says, we've got some challenges. You know, we've got 32 million workers in the UK, but only 6 million of them are in a trade union. So we have a very small sector of what is a huge pot that we need to organise. That's the challenge that we face in terms of organising as a movement. And only 15% of trade union members are low paid. So we're not at the coalface enough as a movement, and we've got to be at the coalface, and we've got to be there standing up for those that need that support. And that can be challenging for us as a movement. I know that when I was a shop steward on the shop floor in local government, you know, where we had weekly councils and recognition agreements, it was a lot easier for us as trade unionists to go in there and represent. Whereas in some of the private sector and some of the chronically low paid, it was a lot harder. In fact, we were refused even to go on premises a lot of the time. And guess where that was? It was in the care sector. So I came through the trade union movement in the care sector. I started off in the private sector. And again, the trade union wasn't there where I started in my workplace. And practices that went on and the way in which we worked was not only detrimental to us as workers, but it damaged the care that we were trying to provide to the people that were the most vulnerable, that needed us the most. And it was only when I got into the council that I knew that there was a recognised union, and it was a union rep that came up to me and said, you need to join the union. And then I rose through the ranks. So, and that was, you know, a long time ago now. I mean, I'm 40 now, so we've probably, yes, good 21 years ago, which is shocking really. And without that, if you look at where we've got to now compared to where we were then, I think it's even harder. And the challenges that people face on the front line, especially with the pandemic, shows you that there's so much work for us to do as a movement to represent and support those people. I think the challenges we face today are a different challenge, but very similar to age-old problems that we faced, whether that's Peterloo, whether that's the Corn Laws, whether that's the attacks on the Trade Union Act. You know, there's been countless times throughout our history where we face these really difficult, challenging moments. And what inspires me is that I know that we've got the answer to these questions and that we can support our class and our movement. And the challenge for us really, and Dave touched on it, is that I often call the trade union movement my family, because I came from quite a dysfunctional background, and it was only when I got into the trade union movement that I actually thought I was valued for who I am, and I felt like, you know, you could be different and still be part of the same organisation, same family. And we are a family, but like any family, we compete and we argue at times. And what we've got to do now, more than ever, is unite together under the umbrella of the TUC. And that means that, you know, these pledges that we've put together are the foundations to build our roots again. If we don't build our roots now, then changing this government so that we can do all of those socialist things we absolutely believe in will not happen. Now, I know that it's controversial to mention Tony Blair, but if you look in pre-1997, it was people like Roger Bickerstaff and others that really pushed Tony Blair and others to make the right moves on policies like the national minimum wage. If it wasn't for the union demanding and telling the Labour Party what it needed for its working class and for its members, then we wouldn't have had that victory in 1997. That victory came because our movement came together and was listening to what people needed on the front line. And I'm absolutely convinced that if myself and Kia listen to the movement, work with you to recruit and to change our policies so that they reflect the aspirations that we need to come out of this economic crisis that's about to hit, this health crisis that we have in this country, this living crisis that we have, the standard of living that people have, then I think that we can really inspire and we can have a landslide victory again. It's not going to be easy. We've got challenges in Scotland, which keep me awake at night. But again, this is about, I think, people on the front line and many trade unionists as well, seeing that the Labour Party represents them, that they're listening to them and that they're respectful of who they are and what they stand for and what their values are. So I'm really pleased to be addressing you today. I'm really pleased to be addressing you today as one of the people that has benefited and seen the value and seen what the trade union movement can do when it comes together. Because for me, everything that I do now as the deputy leader of the Labour Party, the chair and the campaign coordinator, is about taking all of those organising skills that I learned from the trade union movement, and in particular from Unison Northwest and one of my best friends, Kev Nelson. Me and him worked really hard with Rodney Bickerstaff on organising, and we saw the fruits of that in Unison. When other unions were losing members, we were gaining them. And we can do that again. If we all come together, if we all work together, then not only can we win the challenges that we face, like the CWU did recently, as they've pushed forward against some pretty vile employment practices. When we all come together, we win, and not just win in our workplaces, but we provide a better society for everyone. So I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting me to speak. And please make sure you have real hard pledges, and not only that you agree to those pledges, but that you work with me and the rest of the Labour movement to enact them so that we can make change for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Excellent stuff. We've got some interesting questions that have been posed by delegates. We'll have those picked up and addressed over the course of the organising event. Just a reminder for people that after this at 11:45, the next session is the State of the Unions and the challenge we face. So I think that's going to be closely related to some of the issues that Angela and Dave and Paul have already referred to. But I'd now like to invite Frances O'Grady to make a contribution, please.
Frances, you're on mute.
Oh, hello. Thanks to Jed, thanks to Paul, thanks to the wonderful Angela, and to the trade union movement's answer to T-Rex's Telegram Sam, Dave Ward. My job today is to introduce a video where we're going to see union leaders taking that pledge. And it is fantastic news that, as Paul said right at the beginning, of the last 2 years, the trade union movement together has recruited an extra net 200,000 new members, and that is down to the hard work of our reps, first and foremost in the workplace, our dedicated organisers, but also increasingly it's down to our digital campaigners, because more and more people are joining online. And I want our movement to represent working people from all walks of life. We've got to have numbers, but we've also got to have bargaining power. So I want a movement that represents software engineers and supermarket workers, coders and cleaners. We've got to represent people from all walks. But we also have to be much more ambitious, because we can do better than 200,000. We can start reaching for much more ambitious numbers than that. And there are millions of reasons why all of us have to make organising the number one. Here are some of them. We've got 9 million workers on furlough, uncertain about their future come October. We fought for that scheme. That was the first ever wage subsidy scheme in the UK, where money went into workers' wage packets rather than just the boardroom. Let's not throw it all away, but to win, we've got to organise those workers. I want every care worker to belong to a union, so never again do we have care workers being denied proper protection, proper PPE. I want every 0 hours worker to join a union, to win that right to guaranteed hours. And I want every talented young person who will be joining that Kickstart scheme, job creation scheme. I want to keep them safe. I want their wages to be decent. I want that to be a bridge to a steady job. The only way we will win that is if we get them into a union. And I want every key worker, from the NHS and care homes right through transport, supermarkets, refuse collectors. I want all of them to get the pay rise they deserve. The only way we'll win is if we organise. This is the New Deal that Dave fought for, his union fought for, and now the whole TUC is fighting for. This is the real New Deal that we want to see. And we only win if we build numbers, but also bargaining power and organisation. So I just want to say, regardless of whether we're men, women, young, old, race, religion, or our backgrounds, I know that all workers are better off if they join a union. So that's why all our union leaders have made that pledge. And it is my pleasure to introduce the video on making organising the number one, because together we will win. This is it. The future is here. In 2020, the world changed forever and we responded.
Key workers put their lives on the line in service of their communities, and the fight for justice gained momentum.
People began to organise.
While the pandemic has threatened our lives, our incomes and our security, the UK's trade unions have become more vital than ever.
Whatever your situation at work, being in a trade union is the best way to protect your job. Be safe.
Get your wages rising, your rights protected, and secure the respect you deserve.
But in order to fight and win for working people, the unions need to grow.
We need to access emerging industries, break into new sectors, and harness the power of technology for a 21st century approach to communication.
So we, and many others, pledge to
recruit more young members,
inspire thousands of activists from all backgrounds to become new workplace reps and train them up,
work cooperatively as TUC unions to bring trade unionism into new and growing sectors,
eliminate insecure employment,
to modernise how unions operate, organise and communicate for a digital-first era,
drive up union membership in workplaces where we already have recognition agreements with employers.
And we will put equality at the heart of everything we do to ensure our movement is genuinely representative of all working people.
When we work together, we grow together and we win together.
So it's time to organise.
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 Thank you, everybody. That brings the first session of Organise 2020 to a close. I hope that you attend and enjoy as many of the sessions as possible, and that you have a great couple of days and you take away those key messages about organising and building our movement. Thank you very much.